didn't have a little camera icon.
Hello, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll try to get you out of here on time if at all possible, and not drag it on and bore you more than I usually do. What I need to do is first start by telling you what the schedule is, and you know my schedule is really bad, and I do apologize. We'll get through this, and then we'll figure something else out. But next week is, of course, school board meeting, and do you think I'm going to miss this school board meeting? Not a chance. You look very good there.
Somebody's coming from Toronto to be the Orangeville School Secretary.
Hey, I don't want to be president. I just want to live old enough to become president.
And they had
Anyway, so next week's school board meeting, we will not have this class next week. That's May 8th. There will be no class on May 8th. This is the schedule we've always gone, that I put on the Neil's History Hub Facebook page. It hasn't changed. Then the following week, the 15th, we will be here. And then, the next 2 weeks after that, I'm going to Alabama. Our grandson is graduating from high school, so I'm going to fly back to his graduation, and then my daughter and I are going to tour Civil War battle sites.
That'll be
And
so
it's going to be
neat.
fun. So,
That's really fun. Tom and I did it. We toured all the presidents'
North
houses.
Carolina.
Oh, wow.
That was
It's so
okay,
green
can I guess
back
which
there.
is the best? Truman.
We go to Truman's.
Oh,
Sorry.
I've heard such good stuff about it.
No, the best one was Madison, was it?
Madison.
Yeah. And then
Well, it sounds wonderful.
I like George Washington is the best. I like where it's at.
Did you see Martha? She goes.
So I won't be here on the 15th plus, the 22nd or the 29th
Yeah, that's Memorial
for
Day.
2 weeks. And then I'll be back on June something.
It's on
Third,
your web
fourth.
thing.
That Wednesday I'll be back.
So what battlefields are there in Alabama?
Very few.
Besides
But-
Mobile Bay.
Yeah, Mobile Bay, but Huntsville, Alabama had no battles around it. But the boys from Huntsville fought in every single major battle. And the battlefields make an arc over Huntsville. So we're going to go to Bloody Shiloh in Mississippi, which is almost straight out from Huntsville. And then you go through all the Tennessee battlefields and Chattanooga and Chickamauga, and by then you're into Georgia. So we're going to go Mississippi, Tennessee, and Georgia in this arc.
Oh, it'll be beautiful
So
in
I
the
think that'll
spring.
be cool. Yeah, I think it's going to be
We
cool.
lived in Georgia for a year, and I don't even think I have a Georgia shot glass.
Well, that's ridiculous.
I know.
Do you want shot glasses?
Bring
from
Julie
other
a Georgia
people?
shot glass.
Okay, because I only want shot glasses places I've been.
Yeah, we get them from other people.
Okay.
But I've been to every state but Maine.
Oh,
Not just
You're way ahead
going,
of
not
me.
just in the airport. I mean,
Meanwhile, I think I want my ticket.
No. Maine is gorgeous. Go in the fall.
I've driven
Well,
through them or.
So let me tell you the great thing about Maine. It's the only state whose name has one syllable.
Really?
And it is the only state that only borders one other American state.
Best thing about Maine is
And
lobster.
plus they have lots of
Yeah.
lobster and seafood.
I had a lobster
Yes, they
roll
do.
every day while we
Red
were there.
Bay.
Gwen and I have been to Maine. We were in Massachusetts, and then we went to New Hampshire, and we drove a few miles into Maine so we could say we were there, and we came back out.
I've been to Quebec, Canada, and down to Montreal.
So you have to start on all the provinces now, Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here. I'll quickly review what we talked about last week. We're talking about the civil rights movement, and I want to emphasize one thing. I'm not talking about politics today. We're just not. The best I can understand it, if I have it wrong, you can correct me, but we're not talking 2024, we're talking 1964, which is 60 years ago. So,
It's too bad it was still.
okay,
such a-
civil rights movement. We talked about how Jim Crow laws had been passed that were governing the states. And then in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson said separate but equal is okay. And then some things began to change. World War II, African Americans fought bravely and valiantly in all of our armed forces for the first time ever. And we began to see in sports how change started to take place. And then President Truman desegregates entirely the military, which is a huge step forward. This one, you can't even, it gave African Americans, honestly, a place that they were not held back. Or shouldn't have been held back, of course. And we talked about this really great man, Thurgood Marshall, who becomes this incredible attorney, goes to the Supreme Court 32 times, and wins 29 of those cases. And he was with the NAACP who saw the way to segregation using the courts through lawsuits. Okay? Then we saw that, we saw that the huge victory was Brown versus the Board of Education, where the Supreme Court ruled that all public schools should be segregated. And everybody just agreed with it suddenly. Not. And the Southern Manifesto was passed as 101 senators and congressmen in the United States signed the Southern Manifesto saying they're going to massively resist Brown versus the Board of Education. They're encouraging their states not to follow it. Okay? We talked about then the murder of Emmett Till, which, though probably was it was a terrible thing, but a smaller thing in comparison to some of the other things that happened. But because of the way it was handled, and by his mother, it becomes an emotional point to kick off a renewed effort in the civil rights movement. Okay, and we talked about Rosa Parks, and I saw a wonderful T-shirt. Who had that T-shirt?
That's not wonderful.
I thought it was cute.
Brock.
Oh, my grandson Brock has one that says, nah, Rosa Parks, 1955. Move, nah. So,
You have
I'm
to
kind
get
of
the full
proud of him
context.
to know who Rosa Parks was and have that T-shirt. I thought it was very good. Anyway, it kicks off a bus boycott that first off would last about a day, and then it lasts for well over a year, as it should be.
I mean,
And when Congress exempts themselves from paying Social Security, but gets a lifetime retirement if they've served 40 years.
That's going to just law.
It is not a just law.
No, it isn't.
And you know how to tell that. Not just, I just don't feel like it's just.
I like
There's a reason for it. It applies to the people, not to the lawmakers. And that's why I like that 28th Amendment that has been proposed that says, other than their salary, Congress gets no benefit that the people of the United States don't have.
that's long
Really,
overdue,
I
long overdue.
I don't know if they'll ever pass that. They're kind of,
They won't.
I don't know. Go ahead,
Can you
Dan.
put that on Facebook, that particular frame, so I can pull it off?
Can you put
Sure.
the picture up?
Sure, I can.
Okay. If
I'll do
you
that.
don't mind doing that.
No, I don't mind. It's
It'll
just
be
my
on
memory
it'll
to
be
do
on
it,
the
but I will
YouTube.
get it done. It's
The
last
very
one.
bottom one, yeah.
An unjust law is a code that a majority inflicts on a minority that is not binding on itself. This is difference made legal. On the other hand, a just law is a code that is slavery. It was the majority of people in the South, say South Carolina, the majority of people in South Carolina like slavery. Does that make it just or unjust? To be slaves, it's an unjust law. It's an unjust law. 65. So I should protest that, and I should break the law. Should they break the law? Isn't it just or an unjust
It
law?
applies to everybody.
It applies to even the lawmakers? Get
Yeah.
pulled over?
Yeah.
That's right.
My sister Sharon was a judge.
Regularly.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, but
So yes, if it applies to equally with the law keepers, the citizens, it's a just law.
Of the defense bar. They just want to continue the case out forever until the prosecutor gets tired.
They're hoping to wear him out, and if they don't, then they turn around and say, he didn't get a speedy trial.
Right.
After they're the ones that's caused this not to be a speedy trial. Yeah.
I think that's,
But
there's a
if-
lot of
if-
truth to that.
If people are putting off, that's not justice. If they say, and well, that's what the 8 black ministers were saying to Martin Luther King Jr. Just go slow and wait, eventually we'll get this. Okay, and several other good statements in here too.
The Equal Rights Amendment's been out there for, what, 60 years? It's not ratified.
Well, I wish they'd really get that ratified, because I'd like to start being equal with women. I really would.
It's just a matter of principle.
I know, they don't want me to be, I don't know. We talked about Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. Oh, no, this is where we were.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
This is where we were, so we've caught up. Okay. Central High School, Little Rock, Arkansas, decided that they would follow the Supreme Court and desegregate. Okay, this was scary, because it was not what the majority of people in Little Rock, Arkansas wanted. But the school board says, let's follow the law. And so they said, we're gonna desegregate Central High School, the big high school in Little Rock. And they asked for volunteers,
Young people are so much.
and they got nine high school kids right here. Here they are. There's a Little Rock 9, is what they're called in history. The Little Rock 9, they volunteered to go to school. And when they showed up to go to school that first day of school, this showed up, this crowd. And the crowd said, you're not coming in here. And the Little Rock 9, only 8 of them showed up. And those 8 came up trying to get to the steps, and this crowd would not let them get there. And so some of the leaders of the NAACP and Southern Christian Leadership Conference were there and said to him, this is too dangerous, you're gonna get hurt. Let's go down the street, there's a house down there we can meet in, let's go down there. And so the 8 left. They thought Elizabeth Eckford had chickened out. She hadn't. She was running late. And she showed, and this assumption the other kids are in the school. Yes. And this one face, one with the mouth open. Where do you get that kind of anger at someone coming into your high school
At such a young age.
at such a young age? And
She looks older than that.
they're not. This is how old they were. And Elizabeth Eckford said, they're not here, let's go. And they got her. But they didn't come back till they had some protection. I'm going to show you that protection. But this one, I looked, and her name was, oh, I've lost her name. I looked her up. See, look what I did for you guys. No, I didn't. I looked her up because I wanted to know what happened. And later on, years later, this young lady found Elizabeth Eckford and said, can I talk to you? And they met and they talked, and she apologized.
Which one?
This one right here, but they were never going to be close. There was a meeting, there was some forgiveness there, but it was healing. It wasn't going to fix it.
And to have that for the next, 50, 60 years with her face like that.
Yeah,
Of course she tried to apologize.
So, the governor of Arkansas is going to fix this. Orville Faubus, of course, you have a little baby You look at him there in the cradle and you say, we shall name this child Orville. Right, Mrs. Faubus? Yes, okay. So, this is Orville Faubus.
That's why you don't let men name children.
He calls out the National Guard to stop the black kids from coming into the school.
Stop
To stop them. This is Orville.
Not to protect them.
No, not to protect them, to keep them out. He calls out the National Guard. Okay? And he calls them to stop the kids from coming into Central High School. And here you see, they've come back the next day, now they're all there, all 9 of them. And here's the National Guard standing there saying, no, you're not coming into our school. Now, understand, this is a public school paid for with public funds. After the Supreme Court has ruled, schools have to be segregated. And then this is, as you can see, this is Orville right here giving a speech. There on the steps of the school, you can see the Confederate flag, and he's simply saying, no, we're not going to have black kids come into our school. Do you know who you shouldn't take off?
Martin Luther King.
The President of the United States.
President, formerly General Eisenhower,
Ah, yes.
who says, and by the way, he'd been born and raised in Kansas, which was kind of a state that was
In between.
sometimes had some segregation laws and whatnot, but he said, you don't disobey the United States Supreme Court. You don't get to. And as the chief executive, my job is to enforce what they have ruled. And so, Eisenhower sends in the 101st Airborne Division. Now, some of you are lining up because you know about the 101st Airborne Division.
Yeah.
They were in every major battle in Europe of World War II. Battle of the Bridge Too Far. They fought, they were in every major battle in Europe. And they jumped out of airplanes to do it. They were, and he sends them down there, and these pictures are from that. Here is the 101st Airborne Division saying to the Arkansas National Guard, put your guns away and go home. If you want to know what a war is, we can show you what a war is.
We got rid of bullets.
We have real bullets. And so this is them escorting the kids into the school. But it went a lot farther than that. Not only did they have to escort them into school, they had to, for a year, escort them from class to class. And they did. You would see 8 soldiers and 1 kid going to a class
Like the
to get
president's
the
son.
kid there safely. Okay? And here they are. The kids are getting out of a car, and here is the 101st Airborne Division, those kids, and they found out what bayonets are used for. Eisenhower sent them in to safely escort them, and after 1 year, the Little Rock, Arkansas School Board said, well, fine, we'll close our schools rather than desegregate.
Where did their kids go to school?
Private schools, home schools, whatever, they closed their schools. And
Kids are always the victims of adult stupidity.
they closed the schools, later they reopened them, when they opened them, they were desegregated. But the board made that decision to close rather than,
How did the change of heart come about then if they, when they reopened?
later on, the times they were changing.
I don't think it
Other
was a
schools
change.
around the area through the south were starting to desegregate. So they didn't have to be the first.
But they're the ones that made the decision to desegregate before this
They
happened.
did,
Yeah.
but the threat and violence changed their minds and said.
Well, and I don't know that it was a change of heart. I think it was just, this is inevitable. We better get on board.
What's that?
What was the political future of Orville?
The government,
Yeah, his future, when he did this, his future was
Then
pretty much done. Although
So-
there's going to be another we'll talk about in his future, just went on fine.
How brave were those kids to go in? Because you know they were enduring racial slurs the whole time from the other students.
Being spit on
Yeah.
the teachers.
for the teachers.
the
Yeah.
teachers, all of that, they had to be incredibly brave.
They did.
able to hold a temper.
Yeah, they have to be
Well,
patient.
well, I mean, you know, after so long, you think.
About
you're
20 years ago, they had a reunion, and they were all still alive, and they got them all back together. And they met at Central High School. So, I don't know.
Neil, was this before or after the little girl just that was, we're coming to her.
We're talking about Lee Bridges here today.
Okay, she's a brave girl too.
Now, so it's a law to help protect voter rights. The law allowed federal prosecutors or those who suppress another's right to vote. And this is the first Civil Rights Act in 80 years. And Eisenhower signs it. Little Rock pushed him to make it. Politicians don't like to pick a side sometimes. I was a politician for many years. I hated to pick a side. I'll be honest. Not like our good mayor who's with us tonight. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. He's not afraid to pick a side. But you just, I mean, you're going out on it every time you do. Okay, well, Eisenhower didn't want to go out on a limb, but finally he had to. And he did, and this is Martin Luther King Jr. that's there when he's signing this. And we were pretty happy, and the only problem is it didn't have much teeth. Prosecutors could prosecute. They didn't have to prosecute. So it was a good PR move by the president. It didn't have a lot of teeth to it.
Oh, it allows federal prosecution, but it,
So is the guy on the left of Eisenhower black also? or
Yes.
colored?
Yes, in fact, these three
Yeah,
men are
those
black.
three of them.
Yes.
Where's Joe Biden?
Yeah, right.
He was only about 70 then. Oh, I'm kidding. They said I wasn't going to get into politics.
You're gonna get kicked off.
I know, they made the black stand over here and the whites.
Oh, no, that man-
man's black too.
he looks like he's a,
So,
preacher.
you gotta know, Eisenhower in World War II got to see how African American troops fought. And he didn't carry a lot of racism with him. He had seen, and to Eisenhower, that's what's important, how hard you fight.
He couldn't run again anyway.
He could run again anyway. Then there starts to come a change. And it happens.
French fries,
All good things happen at Woolworths. What's that?
French fries.
I used to
French
love
fries,
Woolworths.
malts. Mm.
I don't think I ever ate at Walmart.
Oh, damn, yeah.
Woolworths.
Woolworth.
Well, in February 1st,
You had your own
1960,
drugstore.
4 students, here they are, sat down at the lunch counter at Woolworths in downtown Greensboro, North Carolina. The official policy is we refuse service to anyone but whites. Only whites are allowed to.
There's a black man behind there serving.
Oh, they can serve.
Oh.
They were denied service before a young man refused to give up their seats. And we get a whole new word that hits our vocabulary, sit-ins. Sit-ins, protesting segregation break out across the nation. And all across the nation, black youth are going and sitting down and refusing to move. Okay? Well, this works. Does it fit with Martin Luther King's view of nonviolence?
Yes,
And it does. It does. Are they breaking the law?
No.
Yes.
yes.
They have the right to refuse service.
They have the right to refuse service.
How are they breaking the law if they just sit there?
The law in North Carolina said you can have segregated eating areas. Yep.
But that goes back to the, is the law equal for
Yeah,
everybody?
well, is the law equal and 14th Amendment, is it equally applied?
Yes, okay.
So then, not very long later, April 15th, 1960, 126 students at a call from Ella Bay, director of the SCLC, and Martin Luther King Jr., who was chairman of the SCLC, says to students all over, black students all over America, hey, come to Raleigh, North Carolina. And they come to Raleigh, and at the behest of Ella and Martin Luther King, what we did with ministers to protest, you do with students. And so these 126 students meet together, and they debate, and they argue, and they think, and they plan, and they come out with a new thing, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. And they got the nickname SNCC. SNCC. And they began to organize protests on college campuses nationwide following the ideas of Martin Luther King Jr. And this was their symbol they came up with, a white hand and a black hand shaking hands. And this was SNCC. So now you had attorneys who were suing NAACP, you had ministers who were organizing protests, and you have students now who are protesting. Okay? They were not, they were trying to understand what they were trying to get states to follow the law as it had been passed. Now, and this is really cute.
Yes. She's little.
November 1960, 6-year-old Ruby Bridges is escorted by 4, you can only see 3, but there's another one there somewhere. 4 armed marshals as she becomes the first student to integrate William Franks Elementary School in New Orleans. And there she is, leaving school, and 4 federal marshals around to protect her. Now, many of you know about Norman Rockwell. This photograph affected him.
I'm sure.
And he painted this illustration. He never called them art, he called them illustrations. But here's an illustration of little Ruby Bridges and 4 federal marshals marching through there. And it's entitled, The Problem We All Live With. Norman Rockwell.
There used to be a movie years ago, and we showed our kids at school, and they were just,
I still own that movie.
do you?
It's a wonderful movie.
Yeah,
And it's simply called Ruby Bridges.
Yeah.
I really recommend it.
we've watched it a lot of times, haven't we, Julie?
Okay, the next thing we see are the Freedom Riders. Now, these people, they were brave like the 9 from Arkansas and Ruby Bridges. They were white and black students. This was organized by SNCC now, with help from another group called CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. So they got together and they raised some money and they rented 2 buses, just the unthinkable. They were leaving Washington, D.C., and sometimes other places, as this would try to continue, and they would go down, staying on federal highways as much as possible. And they were traveling down through Virginia and then turning and going into through Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and on down to New Orleans is where they were headed. And they let everybody know where they were coming, and whenever they would stop, white and black people would go to the same bathrooms at their stops. And there were a lot of really mad people. What they were trying to do is push President Kennedy now. Eisenhower's no longer the president. Kennedy is the president. He's a politician. He doesn't want to take a stand. He's a Democratic politician. He needs the South to be reelected. But what they're trying to do is force his hand by driving on federal highways. Federal highways, by federal law, are desegregated. And so, the state should not have anything to say about who's riding on those buses. Well, the states didn't say a lot. It was the KKK that said a lot. And the Ku Klux Klan attacked. Now, here are, as they were going down, the one bus broke down and the buses got separated. And so they decided, we'll take one bus and continue. So now there's one bus going by itself is continuing. Here's the kids on that bus. You will see white and black faces both on that bus. And The KKK forced them to the side of the road and stopped them from progressing, got out, and set the bus on fire. And the kids got off the bus as fast as they could, and as they got off the bus, these KKK members beat them up. Beat the heck out of them.
The black and the white young people.
The black and the white. This picture appeared in newspapers all over America, right here. Okay? This is, which guy? Is it this guy right here?
Oh, that's the one up in the right-hand corner, kind of.
I think it's the one on the bottom.
I think maybe that one.
This one?
That one.
Could be. He got pounded. And when people in the north saw a white face that got beat up by white Southerners, boy, that was a death blow to some of the KKK. Not all of them. Some of them. And they used this for publicity purposes to say these kids were driving nonviolently, peacefully. Heck, I think they were singing Kumbaya and everything on the bus. Hadn't been made yet? Okay. Anyway, this is the bus. This is the bus after it happened. Some federal marshals were sent down to investigate. Look at that bus.
So they actually have roadways that were segregated?
State road.
Jim Crow laws in the state segregated state roads. Blacks and whites couldn't ride together unless the black person was the chauffeur for the white person. Or perhaps the bus driver or something like that.
No,
But not
oh my
like
gosh.
Even private cars?
They could, some states would try to enforce it even in private car kids.
Did any of those kids die from this?
No, none of them died. But, well, let's stick with this. President Kennedy had to do something. He couldn't allow the KKK to take over federal highways. And so, being the good politician Kennedy was, he made a deal. He made a deal with the governors of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Protect them. Protect them all the way through. This is doing nothing but hurting your state. Protect them all the way through. And when they get to Louisiana, we'll have the sheriff down in New Orleans arrest them for disturbing the peace, and they can go to jail, and I won't interfere on a federal level.
Wait a minute, who's going to jail?
Those kids.
These kids,
Serious?
yeah,
Just for riding in a bus on a highway.
right. But Kennedy was throwing a bone to the South, at the same time trying to keep the kids from not getting killed.
Well, their bus was burned up.
They got another bus.
Yeah.
There were people who would provide them with a
What
bus.
about this program, is he on it?
I don't know if he finished up or not, but a lot of them got pounded too. Anyway, they finished up their trip, escorted all the way by state troopers from each of the states, making sure they got there safely, keeping their deal with President Kennedy, got to New Orleans. They got off the bus, they made it, and they were arrested and given a trial, found guilty of disturbing the peace, and spent some time in jail.
When did they disturb the peace?
Well, they were riding blacks and whites together.
That-
What do you expect's gonna happen?
You know, New Orleans was always, well, it wasn't desegregated, but they had a lot of blacks there, they had a lot of mulattoes there,
They
had a lot of-
did. It was the more, actually, for the deep
really
south, it was
ethnic.
the most progressive, I don't know if that's a good word, the most liberated, integrated state
Yeah,
there
it was really
But
ethnically
they still
diverse.
had been passing Jim Crow laws. That's where Plessy versus Ferguson came from, was Louisiana. Do you have to have separate cars, or can they just ride in separate sections of the same car? That was Louisiana, that was New Orleans.
Were the police departments, were they still segregated?
The blacks were not allowed to be police officers.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah, blacks are not allowed to be police officers. So, okay. Now, then in May of 63, 63 is this huge, important year for so many things. And we go back to Birmingham, Alabama, the most segregated city in the United States. And with Martin Luther King and others, they pulled together the Children's Crusade. Now, I don't know about the morality of using your kids. But they did. And they took kids from ages 6 through 18. They were able to get about 1,000 kids who committed, and they slough school. And this is May '63, and the school's almost down anyway, right? Who
Yeah.
cares? No, I'm just kidding.
But
In May of
seniors are
63,
quick.
these kids go down to Birmingham, Alabama. They're not in school, and they march. And they march peacefully and without causing any disruption of traffic or anything like that. They're marching, and the police of Birmingham show up, and I just want to see what kind of methods they were using. They turned dogs on them. They turned dogs loose on them. And they brought in the fire department, this is Birmingham Fire Department here, and they just hosed the kids. Anybody been hit with a fire hose before?
Oh, it sounds terrible.
Oh, it hurts. And they are
What were
hosing
you
these.
doing?
What's that?
What were you doing? When you got hit?
Okay, so I wanted to teach kids what World War I was like. So I got the Castledale Fire Department. They volunteered, because they always volunteer for fun stuff like this. And they brought 2 fire hoses and put them on the hash marks of the football field. This is the old football field. And I said to the kids, here's a $10 bill. Anybody who wants to go down on the far goal line and run over here past the fire hoses. Now you have to wear the goggles. I want to protect your eyes. But whoever can get across this goal line first can have the $10. So go down there and run towards the fire hoses.
How do you keep from going to jail? Doing that.
We used to do some things at
You
school.
used to be able to do stuff, huh?
I never,
Yeah, well,
it probably was, but I never felt like I was.
I was just.
And the kids came running and they opened the fire hose. I said, you don't seem that old. Oh, no, I meant my grade. But no, that wasn't.
You did it too.
I'm not gonna do it without first seeing if it was safe enough.
Man, it would kill you.
So I put the goggles on too, and I ran and got blown on my butt. And it hurt. It hurt really bad. So they were hosing them down. Look, I mean, you can see what it's doing
And
here.
some of them are just little
Okay? And then here is, they arrested 600 of them,
Kids.
kids.
kids, and put them in jail. And here they're marching them off to jail.
Was there adults with these kids?
No,
No adults.
no adults.
Brave kids.
For just walking down the street, they get arrested.
Well, marching down the street and protesting. Okay, then comes the man, right? June 1963, word comes out that 2 African Americans are going to go into the University of Alabama and register for classes. And so this man right here, George Wallace, governor of Alabama,
I do
Okay.
remember him.
he came and stood in the schoolhouse door and said, "No, you can't come past me."
I kind of remember that.
Do you?
Yeah.
I myself personally, I don't remember it, but my dad kind of required I watch the news, and I like the news.
Yeah. I wasn't
So
very
there it
young,
is,
but I
George
remember.
Wallace, governor of Alabama.
Well, you had only been 5 years old.
Standing in the schoolhouse door. He's got state troopers on all sides, and he says, "No, black people are not coming into the University of Alabama. We're not having it." Now, note, this is a public school supported by public tax dollars. And President Kennedy, now he's got to move. President Kennedy is, it's funny to me because he has now come down to us as one of the leaders of the civil rights movement. He kind of didn't want to be, but they forced his hand. And I suspect that later on, and there was going to be, this is 63, not going to be a lot of later on, but he was probably somewhat relieved that he had made these decisions. But he orders federal
I
marshals
remembered for him.
to go down there, and he federalized the Alabama National Guard. He took it over, and had federal marshals take over the Alabama National Guard, so we didn't get the same thing that had happened in Arkansas. And they marched up. This is a federal prosecutor leading the federal marshals up there, and he says to George Wallace, "Get out of the way." And George Wallace moved. No, he was not giving in. Look at that face, he's defiant. He's not giving in. He is making a PR move, a public relations statement. And he is moved out, and then federal marshals protect the two men who are coming in. He becomes the symbol for segregation throughout the United States. He is the lightning bolt for that, the lightning rod.
I think it's just a face, I remember.
Earlier that year, in January, he had an inauguration as governor. And in there, he made his most famous statement ever. Here it is, I put it in red. Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. That's what he said in his inaugural address. And he was now trying to back that up. I don't know. It's there's something more important than race.
Right.
With football games.
We're gonna make such a fuss.
And that's why Forrest Gump, the chance he had is because he was white at that time. I don't know. Anyway, so Martin Luther King, the SCLC, the SNCC, the NAACP, they joined together, CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, and they call on people to come together to Washington, D.C. for a march on Washington to protest
Million Man March.
to protest segregation in Washington, D.C. They were hoping for 100,000 people.
That's not a lot of
They,
people there.
they did not get 100,000. They got 250,000
Yeah,
who came there. And whites and blacks joined together in this. And they were all there, and it lasted actually a couple of days, culminating on August 28, 1963. And Martin Luther King was to give the big speech.
It was a wonderful.
And he stood up and gave his speech. And the crowd there was like, they were unimpressed.
This isn't the I Have a Dream speech?
Well, not quite yet.
Oh, okay. I'm behind.
Thanks for ruining it. No,
No,
I'm
I'm
kidding,
so-
Shannon.
I'm sorry, I was
Shannon,
just,
I'm just kidding.
I was just a little
So
girl. I mean, I was
he
heaven.
gave the speech, and then it was like nothing. And he turns back to his advisors, and they're like, "We don't know, it sounded good to us." And he looked over, and there was one of the singers. See, they had entertainers perform with, as well as speeches, and she was a famous black singer, Mahalia Jackson. And he turned and he looked at her, and she said, "Stop reading. Martin, just tell him about your dream." So he turned back, and he started over. Totally impromptu, right off the cuff. Now that's not quite fair to say he'd been a minister for how long. he could preach. And he said this. I don't know if I can get through it. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers. I have a dream that the crooked places will be made straight, and all flesh shall see it together." I told you to preach right.
Yeah.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be in the speed of that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands with God Almighty. We are free at last.
That's awesome.
One of the 10 great speeches given, I believe,
Yeah.
in American history. It was not exclusive.
Wonder.
That's how important American citizenship was for them.
But you need all kinds of.
Yeah. That military became this. Latinos.
American Indians.
American Indians. So you're going to 2 times the number of blacks in whites as a percentage of the population. I put up. And you see those people, they didn't see black folks in the problem. They saw army first, and all that kind of thing. They saw green, that was their job.
We're glad you're not teaching anymore, especially this time of year.
I think every district is able to right now.
So,
If I'd have been in there, I would have taken somebody to court. But
Yeah,
I
that's
just
not
said,
good.
just don't say anything. I got 3 more years I gotta get through.
yeah, it's bad.
But I mean,
And sometimes awesome. It says, indivisible, indivisible, how can I
I
say it?
took him longer one time.
this is Braden's first year though. Yeah.
Versus that's English.
I like to. Somebody that, see, he knows the pull of it.
Notice how much he listened to me. He listened to me.
Yeah. I know, and he was saying he doesn't need the Equal Rights Amendment because
They would march into battle singing Battle of the Republic. And their song they sang was John Brown's body lies in the grave. So it may have been as early as 60s.
Oh, sure.
seems funny they're sending spies to watch us, make sure we're not subversive. Well, everyone.
Okay, well, we're back.
Julie was there,
I
right?
think we had many good conversations during the break.
Mike came one time.
Yeah, Mike Jorgensen was here.
But let's go to the next thing. Just a few weeks, 6 weeks after the March on Washington, this happened in Birmingham, Alabama. September 15th, 1963, a 16th Baptist church was bombed and these 4 young girls were killed. Here's what the church somewhat looked like afterwards.
Oh my gosh.
It had been used as the Birmingham headquarters of the SCLC by Martin Luther King Jr. Now, he wasn't there. he had gone to Washington DC and was moving other places, but when he had been in Birmingham, this is where he operated out, this is where his office was. These little girls were super excited about church. And so they got up that morning, they got dressed in their very, very best dresses, and they were all 4 little friends. And they agreed to all go to church early and meet there together. So they showed up at church early, and they were standing right next to where the bomb was when it went off. Now 20 other people who showed up to church a little early were injured, but these 4 little girls were killed.
We're little friends.
And President Kennedy said to J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, find those people who did this. And soon the word kind of leaked out. Money will buy all kinds of information and so forth. There were 4 men. And they began to investigate it, but funny, many people wouldn't testify against them or turn them in, and 2 of them were eventually convicted after a while of bombing the church. 1 man died of old age, and in 1994, now this is 1963. In 1994, the 3rd and last one was convicted. Yeah. But it takes brave men to blow up little girls.
Oh, yeah.
In November '63, President Kennedy is assassinated. Vice President Johnson becomes president of the U.S. And Johnson didn't let grass grow under his feet. He kicks up the Vietnam War, as we've already talked about, kicks it into high gear, takes it from 15,000 advisors to 185,000 advisors or troops in 1 year, and ultimately 500,000 troops in 1 year. That's what he did. He kicked up the Great Society, where he began to form, try to push America closer to a welfare state. Okay, he called it the Great Society. And then he did
So much
push the
respect
Civil
for
Rights
him.
Movement. And he began to push that. Well beyond, I think, what Kennedy ever thought of doing. And so he said this he gave a speech at Kennedy's funeral. Okay, he said, as far as they were working on a new civil rights bill that had some teeth this time, not like the 1957 one. He said, no eulogy could more eloquently honor President Kennedy's memory than the earliest passage of the civil rights bill for which he fought so long. Johnson was fighting for it. And he wanted it passed, and he was willing to use Kennedy's memory to get it passed. And it hits Congress, and it's a fight. The Southern senators and congressmen swear it's not going to pass. And it is a pretty harsh fight.
Now, what were you saying about the welfare?
The Great Society is where we begin to form our first federal welfare program. Some states had welfare programs. And we know some towns had welfare programs. But a United States government welfare program started under Lyndon Johnson as part of what he called the Great Society. Lyndon Johnson believed he could end poverty in the United States. And I'm still waiting.
It is poverty, or he can implement.
Well, see, here's the problem with Johnson. Every one of these things is expensive. And you can't fight a Vietnam War and put in effect the biggest welfare program the world has ever seen and fight the civil rights battles without money. And there just wasn't enough money in the United States at that time.
Wow.
Well, again, I remind you, the United States government does not print money. They mint coins, which are now, to show you that it is a government program, 1 penny to make 1 penny costs us 2.5 cents.
Hold on to those pennies, they're gonna be worth a lot someday.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, that's a government program. But it is the Federal Reserve that prints money. And they try to control the economy by how much money they're printing. So, I find it kind of ironic that throughout, from the 60s on, we love to blame presidents for the economy. They have very little to do with it. Now, sometimes they will get laws pushed through that cannot have an effect. I'm not saying they don't. But a president can, a couple of years, and in that couple of years, vote it out, and it's, the person who follows him suddenly sees the economy go up, and he says, look what I did. And everybody looks and says, what did you do? Oh, I wish I did. There's a delay. There is a delay. And there's a delay in programs. But back to this, there wasn't enough money in our country to do what Johnson wanted to do. But he said, I'm going to fight the civil rights fight. And he does. With his support, with people in Congress, they pushed through the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And it prevents employment discrimination due to race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. Title 7 of that act established the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to help prevent workplace discrimination. And here's the thing, it was different than 1957 law. This one did not give the federal prosecutors a choice. If there was a discrimination complaint, they had to investigate, and if they found cause, they had to prosecute. Now, that could mean working out a deal, that could mean a plea bargain, that could mean those kind of things. But they couldn't, it wasn't left to their discretion. What do you think, Brent? You're the attorney here.
Well, I don't like anything that says I have to prosecute.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Utah, until just recently, had a law in the books that said if the county attorney found out that there was gambling going on, they had to prosecute it. If they didn't, they were guilty of a misdemeanor. It was stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, a raffle, we're supposed to prosecute raffles.
And your family home evening poker game?
Anything we were supposed to prosecute. They finally repealed it, but that law actually said that I had to file that
Right.
if I found out about it. It was stupid.
See, that's why I wanted you to comment, because I think a lot of us could agree with this, but that's what this law did. You will investigate if there's a complaint, and you will take action if you discover that there is cause there.
But it gave them at least the
But it meant
action.
They could put people in jail. So it was, in some ways it was extremely good, in some ways it was extremely bad. Emory High School got in trouble with the EEOC a few years ago. We had too many male sports and not enough female sports. Now, that wasn't Title VII, that's Title IX.
No, but you wouldn't have any if it weren't for the
But-
baby boomers.
They would not count drill team as a female sport.
That's why I think about the softball field, and then all of a sudden decided to pop it down. It's a cement barrier all the way around it.
They should have seen how strong
That's-
those drill team
Have you been to
were.
Boston? That's just the wall right there. That's just anyway, I hate to get into sports, but this, yeah, here we go. Anyway, the EEOC said Emory High had too many men's sports, not enough girls' sports, so we had to drop boys tennis. And then it cut us back to the right number of sports.
I'll tell you
Yes.
about it some more books.
So did this law solve everything? No, it had its problems, but it was a big step forward. And here he's signing the law, and he's giving the pen that he signs it with to Martin Luther King.
I was gonna say, what are they doing with their hands there?
So there you go. Okay. None of this, however, affected voting.
Even clear now in the 1960s?
Oh, yeah. We're now at 1965, and none of the laws they've passed, the 57 law, the 64 law, changed voting. There was no protection for voting rights. Voting was the purview of the state.
Goodness.
So, to show you how this worked, they still, and some of you who remember these things, I know you do,
Well, I do.
there were
64.
literacy tests. You were a white man and you came in, they gave you a literacy test. Spell cow.
If you were.
If you were black, okay, good, spell Saskatchewan.
I think they should have tests now.
Well, anyway, they did have. However, the law was not administered equally.
Taxes.
Poll taxes helped them to get rid of two groups they didn't like. They didn't like African Americans and they didn't like poor whites. And so you had to pay a poll tax to be able to vote. You had to be of a certain economic status so that you could vote. And how this worked out is in Mississippi is the best state to see this. In 1964, not one single African American show up to return from polling place to place was always significant. Still to this day. Still to this day. But so here is a so here is a black girl out protesting. Let my people vote. And get a whole bunch of black people registered. Now, and so they called white northerners, some black northerners, came to the South, especially they focused on Mississippi, and began to get people registered to vote. Okay? So here's a couple of white girls here. Signs, register to vote, and the literacy test. They're going to guarantee that the literacy test is administered fairly. Yes, this is white northerners sticking their noses in where they don't belong.
Well, so did the white voters have to take literacy test?
Yes, they did. Their words were easier. What's that?
Were they?
Uh-huh.
It really was rigged, huh?
Of course.
What?
How else can you meet your goals? And this young man here helped make Mississippi part of the USA. Register to vote.
Well, yeah.
This young man was very important. This is him right here. His name was Michael Schwerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman. They were the first ones down there in Mississippi. They were working like crazy. And they disappeared. Schwerner, he was married, and his wife, who had come down with him and was working at registering people, she went to the police, and the police said, well, he probably ran off and left someone like you. And she knew that wasn't right. So, where do you go? You go to the FBI. By the way, the head of the FBI was a little on the racist side himself. However, it got back to President Johnson what was going on, and President Johnson said, you get those FBI agents down and you find those three boys. That's literally a quote. You get down there and find those three boys. And they're college students. So they went down and they began to look and look and look. They were nearly on the verge of giving up. When they got a tip. Somebody phoned in a tip, and I imagine got rewarded for that, which I hope they were. Said, go tear this dam apart they're building. They're building a dam across this river, earthen dam, dirt dam. Go tear that apart. And so they went there, began to dig, and they found their 3 bodies.
Oh my gosh.
They had been killed shortly after they disappeared. These 2 were shot in the head. This one was beaten to death over what they estimate may have been as long as 24 hours.
Oh.
And then they were dumped in the works where they were working on this dam. They dumped them in there, covered them over, and then as they were making the dam, they filled it in over them.
Dig them out.
I wonder how many people are in Hoover Dam.
24.
You know that?
No, I'm just coming up with a number. Okay. Now, 1965, I wanted to show you this march. Martin Luther King Jr. again is organizing, this is the Selma, Alabama March. They're marching from Selma to Montgomery. You want to watch a great movie? It's called Selma. It's excellent.
I didn't know that's
And
what
they
that was
were
about.
marching from Selma to Montgomery, protesting, trying to put pressure on to pass a Voting Rights Act. A Voting Rights Act. And this is the picture I really want you to see. Are they obstructing traffic?
No.
Yeah.
Are they?
Well, not much.
Foot traffic, but wait, you can come on this side. So are they obstructing anybody who wants to cross the bridge? No. What about somebody who wants to drive across the bridge? No.
Looks like they can.
So this is the discussion you and I had, Tom. They're marching, they're protesting, but they're not violent, and they are not interrupting anybody from their own business or commerce.
Neil,
Yes,
I can see them all on the right side.
yes.
There's ones at the bottom goes clear across.
No, they're on the side still, it's just the way the road turns, goes like that.
All those in the white pants are probably
What are we
soldiers.
talking about?
Those little white.
The road turns
Oh,
all the
I
way
thought those
to
were pants.
No. The road kind of curves there.
Oh, okay. See,
Okay.
the very bottom, it looks like they're blocking the whole road, and there's a cop car.
Down here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're-
Well, that
can
is
see those-
mainly, observers and reporters, a lot of reporters report what happened.
But those are cement barriers, so the road,
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are white people. When they start to come down off of there, and this is what happens, they begin to take out batons and fire hoses and dogs and beat them mercilessly. And this is one of the statements I found. Her name was Cheyenne Webb, 6-year-old girl at the time. She was marching. She recalled the scene. She said, I heard all of this screaming and somebody yelled, oh God, they're killing us. And I looked and I saw the troopers charging us, swinging their arms and throwing canisters of tear gas. Some of them had clubs and others had ropes and whips. It was like a nightmare. I just knew that I was going to die.
6-year-old.
She was 6.
But she didn't.
Did she get hit?
Not that I know of. I think
They protected her.
they probably protected her. But you can see what's happening here. Voting rights. Okay. Then, with support from the 24th Amendment to the Constitution was passed in 1964, which outlawed the poll tax. Okay? Now, what happens when you outlaw the poll tax then in, say, the South? Mississippi. Remember how few people could register to vote? In Mississippi, the percentage of African Americans registered to vote jumped from just under 7%. That's what the Freedom Summer had done, is gotten about almost 7% registered, to 70%. Nationwide, the number of African Americans elected to office rose from fewer than 100 to more than 6,000 when you let people register and vote. And got rid of the poll tax. Got rid of the poll tax.
What about the tests?
the literacy tests are gonna be wiped out in August 6, 1965, when President Lyndon Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act. And it will outlaw, make it illegal to have, literacy tests. Now, they had a thing called grandfather clauses that had been ruled illegal by the Supreme Court before that, back in 1915. But literacy tests are gone, poll taxes are gone, and Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act that says the federal government can come, now I don't know how you're gonna like this, the federal government can come and take over voting if they believe that discrimination is happening. If they can see that there's discrimination in voting, the federal government can come in and run your elections.
Who makes that determination?
The Justice Department. The federal government. So,
Gee, imagine.
although I'm sure there has to be a complaint filed with them from somewhere, but that's not hard to come up with. So, that says that they can take over an election. They can also arrest people and put them in jail if they try to stop other people from voting based on race.
So this is 1965,
1965,
before black people could vote in America.
well, in certain states.
I guess, yeah, I guess.
Then, some weird things start to happen, and we're almost done. But just a few weeks after the Voting Rights Act is passed, Civil Rights Act is passed, Voting Rights Act is passed, a massive, violent riot takes place in Watts, in Los Angeles, California. And they burn the freaking place down.
I remember this really well.
Okay, and that's an aerial view of what one of the blocks looked like there in Los Angeles. Later on, in Detroit, in Newark, in New Jersey, in 1967, 50 people, more than 50 people would be killed in riots in those cities. Now, Lyndon Johnson is baffled. Lyndon Johnson is baffled. We've worked hard to give people civil rights and voting rights, and they're rioting?
Is that like a meth gang thing?
Is it what?
Meth gang?
Meth gang? I don't know.
Nobody knows what that word is.
But we,
My brother lived in Newark, and I think it was that time, because it was terrible, they were throwing things through the windows, he came over to work, couldn't get through to the home, yeah.
and you know what you call cars there? Torches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess I'm leaving you with this question. Why?
Yeah.
Why riot?
They burn in their own,
Just like now, when they're
You really
rioting.
bring up a good point. This isn't somebody else's home they're attacking.
they're burning up their own.
Why?
Why?
What are you proving?
Now, we're not gonna meet next week, so I can't tell you the answer. But in 2 weeks, I can tell you the answer. And what we will do in 2 weeks is, we will finish up the civil rights movement of the 60s, and then we will start talking about the space program, which, by the way, is kind of an expensive program for Johnson also.
What's that movie about the three black women and then,
What is about numbers?
I've seen
Oh,
it several
that's-
times.
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures.
Oh, such a good,
Very
Oh,
good.
that's a good movie.
yeah.
Very good.
I loved it.
But we'll answer all these in 2 weeks. So please take a nice week off. If you want to join me, I'm not sure where the school board meeting is this week.
Probably at the high school
Will
auditorium.
you come back and tell us what happened, please?
Well, good luck.
I will, I'll be happy to.
It's really interesting though.
Help us get him elected in Orangeville, because
Oh, that's
most
such
of
a
his,
mess.
his constituency is in Orangeville.
There's a lot of things.
Rita.
Janet, you.
I don't know how to
That's
turn
the
it
whole
off.
thing.
Doesn't it?
Erase the whole thing, because it's on YouTube.
A prosecutor loses, and I had an opportunity a while back to be interviewed by them, and some other people, and they said, what's the biggest problem I saw with justice? And I said, it was minimum mandatory sentencing. Judges locked in who have to give a certain thing without taking into account
Anything.
mitigating circumstances.
Okay, do you want to, what do I push to end this? The X?
What does it say?
I said, what do I do to end this? Is it this X? I don't want to lose the whole thing.
Yeah, let's do that. Are you sure you want to stop streaming?